I love wagons. They look very cool. They sort of give you some street cred when you drive one. And I think today's wagon that we are introducing, the Subaru Outback, is very cool looking. It's very sporty looking. And it is also close to $160,000. I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks this way, which is, why would I pay $157-ish thousand for this when the Subaru Forester is $30,000 cheaper? I mean, if you think about it, the Forester and the Outback share the same ground clearance, about 8.5 inches, and they're also based on the same Subaru Global platform. So it's essentially a different shell on top of the same chassis. And they also have about the same boot capacity, 520 liters. So why are we paying $30,000 more? It can't be only because of the engine. This car has a 2.5 liter naturally aspirated engine, whereas the Forester has a 2.0, so 2 liter naturally aspirated engine. So today we are going to find out why this car commands a $30,000 premium over the Forester. If you saw the side profile of the Outback just now, you'll be thinking, doesn't it look kind of the same from the previous generation? I think that's a feature of the Forester and the Outback in Subaru's lineup. They kind of look similar generation to generation, but there's definitely differences. You know, you get new headlamps for this new Outback, and new grille and new bumper. But more importantly, it is the first time Subaru has introduced EyeSight 4.0 into their cars. So you can see the two cameras up here. I'll talk a little bit more about EyeSight later when I go for the drive. In the meantime, let's check out the boot. Subaru calls the Outback its flagship car, and then they said you're supposed to experience luxury. So when you mention luxury, you're supposed to get kick sensors. But this car doesn't have one. It's something better. No more doing leg kung fu to open up the boot. You just need to hover your hand over the Subaru logo and this thing opens up. And what you get is 520 liters worth of boot space, comfortably passes the anti-trolling length test because this is a wagon. And this is one of the few cars that I've seen with so many tethers. It has 8 tethers all in all inside there, and a side netting here, and a 12-volt socket. It even has a Harman Kardon. I would guess this is a subwoofer in the boot to give the car the boom boom. And what I can really appreciate is because this is a very deep boot, you don't want to pull your back trying to knock down the rear seats, and you can knock them down like that. And it's a very smooth motion from the seats. So good stuff. And the boot floor is extremely flat, so you can just push your load all the way in. One small setback is this parcel shelf. You can remove it, but there's nowhere to store it. So either it lives here or it lives in your storeroom at home. Yeah, but nice, practical, deep boot. I love it. The Subaru Outback 2.5i Touring EyeSight is priced at $158,000. The 2.5 liter engine produces 185 brake horsepower and 245 Nm of torque. The CVT transmission brings the car from 0 to 100 in 9.6 seconds. For more details on the Subaru Outback or any other car, head on to sgcarmart.com to help you make a smart choice on your next car. So, in the back seat of the Outback, you can see that I'm quite reclined, but fear not, the seats can be adjusted to be more upright. Alright, I'm 1.8 meters tall. This is my driving position. You can see there's tons of knee room and foot space as well. I like that I can put my feet underneath the seat, so that's very comfortable. The window is nice and wide, and visibility is great, so you won't feel very claustrophobic. Yeah, for equipment, thankfully there's rear aircon vents, but there's no climate control, so everything is controlled up front, and you get 2 USB ports. For the glove compartment, not glove compartment, the armrest here, you get 2 cup holders. This is not white, it's just the manufacturer's sticker, and we didn't really want to pluck it out because underneath that is piano black. We don't want to get it smudged. And as for the center seat, the center seat is not supremely plush. It's much harder than the side seats. And for a car that has 4-wheel drive, the transmission tunnel is surprisingly low and narrow. So the foot space is not sacrificed much for the middle passenger, and if you want to be really considerate, you can actually put your feet up on the transmission tunnel. This is serviceable for 3 adults. It's not supremely comfortable, but it gets the job done. And of course, there are ISOFIX points, but the cover here is a bit non-traditional. It's actually Velcro, and then you open it up like that, and then you put your child seat. It can be a bit of a struggle to put the cover back. Yeah. Yeah. To the front seat. So Subaru says that the Outback is its flagship car. It wants you to experience luxury in it. And they say that this car is supposed to be more refined. And yeah, you can tell by the 11.6-inch entertainment screen. It's only available on the Outback at the moment. And it does give the car's cabin a wow factor when you first come in. It's huge. There's Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The only bugbear I have with it is there's a slight delay whenever I click into the menus. It's not a deal breaker, but it just sort of takes away from the refined feel of the car that it's supposed to deliver. On top of the infotainment system, there's this black panel here. It houses an infrared camera. What it does is it monitors your face. If you are actually it monitors your eyes, and if you're not looking at the road when you're driving, the car will alert you to tell you to keep your eyes on the road. More importantly, the camera actually recognizes up to 5 different drivers. So I'm driver A, my seat is in this position, my side view mirrors is adjusted to my favorite angles. And if my wife comes in here, the car will instantly recognize her and then adjust the seat and the mirrors to her liking without her having to do anything. So this thing does up to 5 profiles. That's amazing. That is what I call a feature that only luxury cars give. So good stuff. Another luxury feature is the Nappa leather seats. These are a first for Subaru, and the leather soft and supple, comfortable, and they're perforated. Unfortunately, it doesn't mean that it has ventilated seats. It doesn't. So as for the multifunction steering wheel, I feel that Subaru really understands what a driver needs. The adaptive cruise control is located right here, as opposed to European brands where they have a separate stock here, where it's very hard to actually see what the buttons are, and you rely a lot on muscle memory. Everything is legible here, and it's very easy to activate. You just press one button here and just toggle this thing downwards, and cruise control is set. Very safe when you want to activate and deactivate cruise control. So I appreciate that. The other, I think, driver-focused design is putting the sport mode toggle right here. When you want to enter sport mode at a snap of a fingers, it's right here. Versus other brands where you have to turn a dial here, and sometimes you're not sure whether you're turning the dial in the right direction. Subaru makes it very easy. So I appreciate that. Beyond the steering wheel is your instrument cluster. Unfortunately, they are still physical dials, physical rev counter and physical speedometer with a small screen in the middle. It's perfectly serviceable, perfectly legible. Everything I need is there, can be read easily. It's just that if you want to call this car premium and refined and luxury, you know, the European counterparts are moving on to full digital screens. So I wish that it was full digital screens just to, you know, match the Europeans. All in all, I think the cabin is great. It is very refined in comparison to the Forester. Only thing left is to see how this thing drives and how does EyeSight 4.0 perform. Let's go. So, what is it like to drive the Subaru Outback? Some performance figures first. This car is powered by a 2.5 litre naturally aspirated engine, flat 4 engine actually, and it produces 185 brake horsepower and 245 Newton meters of torque. A lot of Subaru purists will be upset that this car doesn't come with a turbo. And Actually, I wish this car didn't come with a CVT. The rubber banding effect is still evident when you're trying to merge into traffic or to take over maneuvers. I think if this was a torque converter transmission, the lack of a turbo could be forgiven. But can you hear? I'm trying to merge into traffic and then the engine just did the whole because of the CVT. And so power is there, but you have to get through the CVT to get it. So it's not a very pleasurable sensation when you're driving a car. But obviously CVTs help you save fuel. So yeah, the 2.5 liters producing the 185 brake horsepower, you can't really feel it unless you really put your foot down. And when you put your foot down, you go through the rubber band first. So not my cup of tea, this drivetrain. But what is my cup of tea and why you should get this car is the EyeSight 4.0 technology. So when I put on the adaptive cruise control, it follows the car in front and it brakes accordingly. In fact, the brake pedal actually depresses itself. So you kind of get that added reassurance that this car is doing the braking and accelerating for you. In fact, when the car brakes, the graphic in the middle here of your car has the tail lamp light up as well, so you know that the car is indeed braking. And what's new for the EyeSight 4.0 technology is also wider camera angles, so it actually detects more things at a wider angle. So for example, you're making a discretionary right turn and then there are pedestrians crossing. This car, Subaru claims, will be able to alert you. One drawback of the previous generation of the EyeSight is that it gets a little wonky when lighting conditions change. So for example, when you come out of the MCE tunnel, the camera actually gets confused for a moment. I kind of had that issue just going under some flyovers actually, but it's not the problem of accelerating or braking. It's to do with the lane centering. So EyeSight 4.0 also gives you lane centering for this car. It actually kind of drives the car for you, especially down very gentle bends and curves and the straights. So it takes a lot of the mental load of driving out of your brain, okay? But somehow when I was going under a flyover and it was a bend, this car felt like it didn't want to steer for me and I had to take control of the car. So I feel that the EyeSight 4.0 can be a very good driver assistant, but sometimes you can't rely on it too much. You really still have to steer the car. It is quite a, I would say, a struggle with the steering because it is actually very heavy. It tries to keep you in the center of the lane and you really have to fight it. So you are between this, whether you're between this choice, you know, do I just let the steering do its thing so I don't fight it? But when it comes to a fast bend that goes under a flyover, then you have to wake up and really help the car make the turn. If not, it feels like you're going to crash into the barriers. Yeah, so that was my experience with the EyeSight. Adaptive cruise control alone, it does well in start-stop traffic. I really enjoy that. So I think there's still some kinks in the EyeSight technology, but I don't think any other manufacturer, save for Volvo, comes close to providing this type of driver assistance where it helps you accelerate and decelerate and keeps you in the center of the lane. And at this price point, you don't really have any other car that performs this way. So good on the Outback to be able to provide a lot of autonomous driving, semi-autonomous driving. Ride comfort wise, this car is actually surprisingly set up for comfort. I don't feel the bumps and ruts that much. And handling of the car, I wouldn't say this car is set up for sporty driving. So I wouldn't take corners extremely quickly with this car. It's also 1.6 tons. This car is comfort biased. So yeah. So as usual, we have will buy, won't buy, or go try the Subaru Outback. This car is in a segment of its own, you know, because at its price point, there isn't any direct competitor. The V60 is a good $40,000 more. The Golf Wagon is much smaller. There isn't actually any Japanese or Korean wagons of this size at this price point. So it's actually very hard to compare. And it is inevitable that some people will compare this to the Forester because of the space that is available, as well as eyesight and the interior. I mean, this interior is indeed more refined than the Forester. It has better speakers, it has better leather seats, but does it translate into $30,000 more? I think Singapore might be the wrong market for this car. Overseas, the price difference is much smaller, not $30,000. So my verdict is won't buy, because it's just way too expensive given the alternative out there, which is actually the Subaru Forester. This interior cabin is great. It's much more refined than the Forester. EyeSight 4.0 is great as well, but it takes a very niche sort of buyer to want to buy a wagon. Basically, you're buying it because you like wagons and you don't mind the 2.5 litre engine that is not turbocharged and is mated to a CVT, and you're willing to pay the $30,000 premium for the street cred. But if you are the penny pinching, value for money kind of guy, the Forester is the better car. It has the same amount of space, more headroom, slightly shorter, has an older eyesight but still does does adaptive cruise control well, and it has a smaller screen, but you know, you have $30,000 to play with a better aftermarket unit, I guess. So yeah, the Outback is a won't buy for me, simply because Singapore is just the wrong market for it. We aren't a country with a lot of country roads for you to go driving on the dirt with. And because of all the additional taxes, the 30,000 price difference is just too great to stomach. So that's my verdict. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Please hit subscribe and follow us on our Instagram as well as our Facebook. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Bye bye.